Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. If a country builds the most advanced, highly automated factories in the world, but 500 million of its workers don't have the education to work in them, who is that future really for?
I mean, that is basically the defining economic puzzle of our time, isn't it?
It really is.
And, the answers are playing out right now, literally on the ground, and reshaping the lives of hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're getting into today. We're looking at this incredibly revealing article titled, China's High-Tech Rise is Leaving Much of the Country Behind.
It's a fantastic piece, really sheds light on things.
Right, and to really grasp what is happening here, I want you listening to just picture a city called Tianshui. It's located in China's western Gansu province.
Okay.
So if you walk through the streets of Tianshui today, you're confronted with this striking, almost like jarring visual juxtaposition.
I love this example.
It's crazy, right? On one side of the street, you have these dusty, completely disused 20th century factories, just silent relics of a massive state-run industrial past.
Right, just crumbling brick facades everywhere.
Exactly. But then, right alongside them, you have a gleaming new exhibition hall, and it's proudly named Tianshui Industry 2050.
You look inside, and it's just filled with, zippy technological products, advanced sensors, and digital displays.
Yeah, it's showcasing the slick, robotic, high-tech future.
So, it's a city desperately trying to build a bridge between two completely different economic realities.
Right.
And that specific visual, the old rusting factories casting shadows on the shiny 2050 pavilion, it just perfectly captures the tension we're looking at today.
It really does. And just to be clear for you listening, our goal today isn't to, take a political stance on Beijing's central planning or endorse any specific ideology.
No, not at all.
We are just unpacking the realities reported in our source material, exploring what the economic data actually tells us about this massive transition.
Yeah. We're just following the numbers, really.
Exactly. Because the mission of our discussion right now is to look past that shiny pavilion. This isn't just some straightforward success story about a nation upgrading its economy to maintain global dominance.
Far from it.
Right. It is an exploration of a stark disconnect between top-down high-tech ambitions and the physical, on-the-ground reality of a vast, less educated hinterland.
Right. And to really understand why this national strategy is sort of misfiring in inland places like Tianshui, we have to look at the sheer scale of what was lost.
Yeah.
We have to understand what exactly the government is trying to replace.
So let's wind the clock back a bit to the 1960s. For centuries before that, Tianshui was this huge cultural hub.
Oh, yeah, lots of history there.
Yeah, legend even says China's first emperor, who was like a demigod, was born there. And the nearby cliffs are carved with these ancient Buddhist grottos.
Wow.
But in the 1960s, the landscape completely changed. The city was physically transformed into a vital cog for the state-planned economy.
Right, they brought in the heavy industry.
Exactly. They built massive, sprawling factories to churn out tractors, ball bearings, matchboxes, all that stuff. And it wasn't just a place to clock in and clock out. It was like an all-encompassing lifestyle.
And that is a crucial distinction, actually. These weren't just manufacturing plants, right? They were entire micro-society.
Oh, absolutely.
The state built the dormitories where the workers slept, the schools where their children learned, the hospitals where they got care. I mean, everything catered to and relied upon this massive, swelling labor force.
And the article brings this to life so well through the story of one worker, Mrs. Dong.
Right, the woman from the printing press.
Yeah, she's in her 80s now, but back in her prime, she worked at a state-run printing press. They called the system the Iron Rice Bowl.
The Iron Rice Bowl, yeah.
Which basically meant ultra-secure, lifelong employment with guaranteed benefits. Her trajectory is almost unimaginable today. She was able to retire in her 40s with a solid pension.
Which is wild to think about now.
And even more incredible, she had a literal guarantee that her son could inherit her job at the press.
See, when you think about the psychological impact of that Iron Rice Bowl, it represented just a profound level of stability.
Completely.
It was an economic ecosystem that absorbed your labor and, in return, mapped out and protected your entire family's trajectory across generations.
Right.
But as China underwent its bumpy, super rapid transition toward a more market-driven economy in the 80s and 90s, the global market fundamentally shifted.
It did.
And most of those localized, labor-heavy factories simply were not efficient or competitive enough to survive the new era of globalized trade.
Which brings us to the modern predicament. Changshui is basically acting like a legacy automotive or steel town in the West, right? Entire communities built around a single labor-intensive ecosystem that suddenly vanished.
That's a perfect analogy, yeah.
So the local government there is currently trying desperately to replace that vanished industrial ecosystem. And to do this, they've sprouted these new high-tech industrial parks.
Right, they're heavily subsidizing them.
Yeah, they're wooing companies by offering incredibly cheap energy, subsidized financing, rock-bottom land deals. The pitch is, come build your new generation of high-tech factories here. Make your gizmos, your sensors, your machine tools.
But the actual reality for the locals walking past these parks is pretty bleak.
So bleak. There's this exhibit at the city's museum showing snapshots of factory floors over the decades.
Oh, yeah, I saw that part.
And each consecutive photo shows fewer human workers and more robotic arms.
And the few human jobs that do exist inside those new parks, they pay a fraction of what is actually needed to build wealth.
Really? How much are we talking?
Well, the typical factory job there pays about 3,000 yuan a month, which is roughly $440 US.
Wow, that's it.
Yeah, that is half of what a similar worker could make in a coastal city like Shanghai. And it doesn't even begin to compare to the tech sector salaries in major hubs.
Right.
I mean, those can easily top 1 million yuan a year for highly skilled engineers.
But wait, hold on. If Tianshui is practically giving away land, offering cheap energy, and aggressively attracting these tech giants to build massive new facilities, there has to be some local benefit, right?
You would think so.
I mean, even if the factory itself is heavily automated, someone has to construct the building. Someone has to maintain the robots, provide logistics, or at least feed the technicians. Shouldn't there be at least some economic spillover or trickle-down job creation for the locals?
See, that is the logical assumption if you're comparing it to 20th century manufacturing. But it totally ignores the fundamental mechanism of what is actually being built today.
How so?
Well, automation is a double-edged sword that cuts the local economy out of the loop entirely.
Oh, I see.
The whole point of advanced manufacturing is efficiency through robotics, which means these sprawling football field-sized factories are practically dark.
Right, there's nobody in them.
Exactly. You do not have 3,000 workers walking out the gates at noon to buy lunch at local restaurants.
Yeah.
You might have, 50 technicians monitoring screens.
Wow.
So the sheer volume of human bodies required to create a massive, vibrant economic spillover effect simply isn't there.
So the local restaurants just stay empty, and the local shops don't see a bump in foot traffic at all.
Precisely. And if we look at the high-paying jobs associated with these tech parks, the research and development, the software engineering, high-level supply chain management, those jobs are absolutely not moving to the hinterland.
Where are they going?
They remain stubbornly clustered in coastal megacities like Shenzhen, Shanghai, or Beijing.
Right, of course.
And the reason is gravity. That's where the elite universities are located, which attracts the brightest graduates. And more importantly, that is where the dense, highly specialized supply chains already exist.
That makes sense.
If you need a custom microchip prototyped by Tuesday, you can get it in Shenzhen. You cannot get it in Gansu province.
Yeah, definitely not.
So a high-tech company might put a heavily automated assembly plant in Tianshui purely to exploit the cheap land and subsidize electricity. But the massive wealth generated by that plant flows instantly back to the coastal headquarters.
So because that wealth and those high-end jobs are anchored to the coast, this inland city isn't just losing out on tax revenue, it's actively hemorrhaging its future.
Exactly.
The lack of viable, well-paying local jobs triggers this demographic and talent death spiral. The young people look around, realize there's no ladder for them to climb locally, and they just leave.
Yeah, they pack up and go.
And the numbers back this up. Over the last decade, Tianshui's population shrank by nearly 500,000 people, dropping down to 2.9 million.
And you can really hear the resignation in the voices of the locals. The article introduces us to Wen Jin, a 27-year-old native.
Right.
She says she would love nothing more than to stay in her hometown and settle down near her family. But because there are no jobs that pay a living wage, she was forced to move to the much wealthier eastern province of Jiangsu.
That's heartbreaking.
And then there's Ma Xin, another local in his 20s, who flat out states that the city's best days are firmly in the past.
Jeez.
I mean, if this current rate of exodus continues unabated, by 2050, the very year that shiny exhibition hall is named after, There will be virtually no working-age people left in Tianshui to staff it.
Wow, that local exodus is tragic, but when you zoom out and look at the national statistics, the scale of this problem becomes staggering.
Oh, it's massive.
60% of China's entire workforce lacks a high school education.
Yep.
We're talking about roughly 500 million people. And from 2018 to 2023, the poorest 10% of workers only saw their wages grow by 2% per year. Meanwhile, the national average hovered around 5%.
And that wage growth disparity right there, that is the mechanism of inequality in action.
Exactly.
It proves mathematically that the bottom tenth of the workforce is actively falling further behind the rest of the country during this transition.
You know, I look at that 500 million number and I kind of think about it like technology.
Okay, how so?
Well, it's like trying to run the latest, most sophisticated AI software on computer hardware from 1995.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. You could spend billions of dollars installing it, but if the physical hardware was built in 1995, it's going to crash.
Yeah, it's just not compatible.
Exactly. You have a massive base of 500 million workers without high school diplomas. That is the legacy hardware. But the national strategy, the software being pushed by Beijing, is pivoting almost entirely to advanced sensors, robotics, and world-beating tech.
Right.
The hardware literally lacks the processing power to execute the new commands. So is this a failure of central planning? Or just the unavoidable collateral damage of a country trying to move up the global value chain?
That is a highly accurate way to visualize the friction, honestly. And to answer your question, it creates a structural trap.
Okay.
Dan Wang, who's an analyst at the Eurasia Group, points out the brutal reality of this mismatch. He says that the vast majority of Chinese cities are, in his words, simply stuck with what they have.
Stuck with what they have. Wow.
Yeah. We generally carry this default assumption that high-tech growth is universally good, right? That a rising technological tide lifts all boats.
Right. That's what we're always told.
But in this specific demographic context, pushing a relentless high-tech agenda without an adequately prepared workforce actively widens the inequality gap.
Because they just can't participate.
Exactly. The connected coastal elites have the educational processing power to capture all the financial benefits of this new economy. Meanwhile, the hinterland workers are left watching automated arms do the jobs they used to rely on to feed their families.
Which is just devastating. And for you listening, whether you're in the American Midwest, Northern England, or anywhere else with a legacy manufacturing base, Tianshui serves as a massive canary in the coal mine for what happens when automation outpaces educational reform.
Absolutely.
These workers are effectively locked out of the new economy, but their situation is compounded because while places like Tianshui are locked out of the new high-tech economy, they are simultaneously being crushed by the ghost of the old one.
Yeah, the old economy is collapsing underneath them.
Right. We've seen China's broader economic growth drop from double digits down to around 5%. And in Tianshui specifically, the local economy grew at a rate 2 percentage points slower than that national average.
And the primary engine dragging that local growth down is the collapse of the property market.
Right, real estate.
For decades, real estate development was the undisputed driver of local wealth and municipal growth. Now, if you take a drive out to the outskirts of Tianshui, the landscape is just scarred by vast tracts of unfinished concrete apartment blocks.
It's like a ghost town.
Yeah. Investment in property in the city plummeted by over 40% last year alone.
Wait, let me stop you there. Because a 40% drop in property investment sounds scary on a spreadsheet.
Sure.
But on a human level, aren't falling house prices actually a good thing for the younger generation?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Right. I mean, if people like Wenjin or Ma Xin were previously priced out of the housing market during the boom years, doesn't a massive crash suddenly make it affordable for them to buy a home, start a family, and actually stay in Tianshui?
Well, in a vacuum, yes. Cheaper housing should benefit first-time buyers. But you have to look at the powerful psychological and economic phenomenon known as the wealth effect.
The wealth effect, okay.
And how it specifically functions in China. Unlike in Western countries where people might invest heavily in the stock market or retirement funds, Chinese citizens hold an overwhelmingly large proportion of their personal wealth in physical real estate.
I see.
It has been their primary and often only vehicle for savings.
So a family's entire life savings, their safety net, is entirely locked up in the value of their concrete apartment.
Exactly that. So when housing prices fall rapidly, especially in smaller Tier 3 cities like Tianshui, the population suddenly experiences a massive evaporation of their net worth.
Right, their wealth just vanishes.
Even if they haven't sold the house and haven't technically lost a single yuan in their bank account, The value on paper has plunged.
Yeah.
This triggers immense financial anxiety. They feel significantly poorer. And what happens when an entire city feels poor at the exact same time? They stop spending money.
They stop going out to eat, they delay buying a new car, they don't buy new clothes, consumer demand just freezes.
And the data perfectly reflects this freeze. Total retail sales in Tianshui slipped by over 5% last year.
Wow.
The article describes these deeply gloomy walks through local shopping malls where the lights are dim, shops are shuttered, and restaurants sit entirely empty.
That's awful.
This is the anatomy of a localized recession. It is a silent economic depression happening right underneath that supposedly stable 5% national growth figure.
Yeah.
And the tragedy is that this property crash is actively destroying the local service economy. Retail, hospitality, maintenance, which eliminates the very fallback jobs that less educated workers desperately need when the factory jobs disappear.
It's just a brutal, self-reinforcing cycle. But the central government isn't blind to this, right? They can see the empty malls and the abandoned concrete flats just as clearly as anyone else.
Well, they know.
They know this widening inequality is a massive structural threat, which leads us to their newly proposed solution and what looks to be the mathematical impossibility of actually executing it at the local level.
It raises a vital question about how policy actually translates from Beijing down to the provinces.
Right.
Even Xinhua, the official state news agency, openly noted earlier this year that just pouring money into machinery and physical assets is resulting in diminishing returns.
So they admit it.
Yeah, they're acknowledging that simply building more robotic factories is no longer a magic bullet for local prosperity.
So in response to that realization, they released the latest 5-year plan in March, which runs through 2030, and it features a major rhetorical pivot.
A huge pivot.
It explicitly calls for investing in people, right alongside investing in factories. The stated goal is to make the economy more equal through education and urban renewal.
Right.
The mandate focuses heavily on giving children from poor rural families the actual skills they need to compete for these better-paid, high-tech engineering and programming jobs.
And as a diagnosis of the problem, it is entirely correct. You simply cannot operate a 21st century high-tech economy without a highly educated, sophisticated workforce.
But the theory instantly crashes into the reality of local municipal budgets. Let's look at the fatal flaw in how this is funded.
Yeah, the math just doesn't work.
Right now, Tianshui spends less than 1/3 of the amount per pupil on education compared to what Beijing spends.
Just 1/3.
Yeah. And remember the property market crash we just discussed. In China, local governments historically fund huge portions of their municipal budgets by selling land to real estate developers.
Exactly.
So because developers have collapsed and property investment dropped by 40%, land sales have practically vanished. As a direct result, Tianshui's local fiscal revenues fell by nearly 10% last year.
Which means the local government literally does not have the capital required to enact the central government's mandate.
It's total paradox.
They're being told to drastically increase spending on schools and human capital at the exact moment their primary source of income has evaporated.
It creates a practically inescapable trap, doesn't it? You need money to educate your kids so they can get the high-tech jobs, but because you don't currently have the high-tech jobs, your tax base is collapsing, meaning you can't afford to educate the kids.
That is the vicious cycle, yes.
So what does this abstract fiscal trap mean for a real family waking up in Tianshui today?
It translates to generational stagnation. There is a devastating perspective shared in the article from a local mother named Shi Tingting.
Oh, yeah, the mother with the 12-year-old daughter.
Exactly. She's navigating this exact system right now. And she points out that extremely few of Tianshui's students ever manage to test into the country's top-tier universities.
Right.
She says, and I quote, "It's too difficult for children to compete here. They end up trapped."
That word trapped is just so heavy.
It is. And this forces us to critically assess a massive omission in how these national policies are framed.
Which is what?
Well, the reporting highlights this severe local budget shortfall, right? But it leaves a massive question unanswered. Is the central government actually willing to step in and forcefully redistribute wealth to these failing municipalities?
Because if Beijing isn't writing massive, sustained checks to cover those local deficits and fund those classrooms, the 5-year plan's goal of investing in people is nothing more than an empty promise for a city like Tianshui.
That is the grim reality. Mandating that a local government dramatically boost education spending while its revenues are in freefall is just an accounting fiction.
Right, it's just words on paper.
Exactly. Unless there is a comprehensive, systemic federal subsidy implemented, a mechanism to actively transfer the immense wealth being generated in booming coastal cities like Shenzhen directly into the classrooms of declining hinterland cities like Tianshui, the inequality is only going to accelerate.
Wow.
The structural trap remains completely unbroken.
Pulling all these threads together, the picture that emerges is profound. The push for a high-tech, robotic future isn't merely a story of technological advancement or an economic shift.
No, it's much bigger than that.
It is fundamentally redrawing the map of winners and losers across an entire continent. Cities that already possess the elite universities, the intricate supply chains, and the concentrated capital are skyrocketing into this 2050 vision.
While the rest are left behind.
Exactly. Cities like Tianshui find themselves crushed in the middle, trapped between the total collapse of their 20th century industrial purpose and their financial inability to buy a ticket to the 21st century economy.
And amidst all this talk of automation, algorithms, and supply chains, we cannot lose sight of the human scale of this transition.
We really can't.
We are talking about hundreds of millions of individual people who built a nation with their bare hands, who are now essentially being signaled that their physical labor is no longer required as the engine of national progress.
Which leaves us with a final, lingering question for you to ponder long after we finish our discussion today. We noted earlier that over 500 million workers in China lack a high school education.
Yeah.
That is a population significantly larger than the entire United States, completely structurally locked out of this new, lucrative, high-tech economy simply by virtue of their geography and their education.
It's hard to even wrap your head around that scale.
It really is. So what happens to the social fabric of a nation that was explicitly built on the foundational promise of collective shared prosperity, when the security of the iron rice bowl is irreversibly replaced by the efficiency of a robotic arm who catches the 500 million people left behind? Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.